So you have the governor of Washington, Bob Ferguson. Good old Bob Ferguson. What's Bob Ferguson up to? Well, he is mulling over whether or not he should limit his emergency powers. There was a lot of controversy when it came to Governor Jay Inslee. Under Governor Jay Inslee, he had to deal with the COVID emergency, so he went ahead and took these almost, unanimous, absolute. He took all the damn power that a governor could take. When it comes to Oregon, Wyoming, and the state of Washington, I heard those three states absolutely love absolute power. And so Governor Jay Inslee, he had the COVID emergency order in effect for almost 1,000 days, 975 days from February 2020 to October 31st of 2022. That's 2 years and 8 months. And during the COVID emergency, he had orders to shelter in place. He closed schools. He had moratorium on evictions. And then there was vaccine and mask mandates. So during this era, this post-truth era, this fascist era, this encroaching totalitarian fascism, it's important to draw the lines of where are the limits of power. Where are the limits of power? I like in our three branches of government system that there is no absolute nor arbitrary power. No absolute nor arbitrary power. That's exciting. That's great. So there's Senate Bill 5434, which allows the legislature to end the emergency if it's gone over 90 days. And then there's something about 30 days, and then they're trying to do this amendment where the top four of the leadership in the Senate and the House could just, write it off or some crap like that. Then there's also a 30-day prohibition of activities unless the legislature extends them. So they're mulling over different things. But essentially, this is really smart. This is really smart for Bob Ferguson to do this. Because when martial law happens, when you have some sort of emergency, when you have some sort of natural disaster, some sort of threat, some reason that you need to deploy the National Guard, then the governor can order more coordination. The governor can reallocate state or federal funds. He can even modify or suspend state statutes, ordinances, regulations. So best practices when it comes to emergency powers, right? I mean, in this time of encroaching totalitarian fascism, we need to think about what would happen if Jan Führer, Joe Biden 2.0, Mr. Ethnic Cleanse Gaza and the West Bank some more, America last, he would be dying. He's acting like a duck, talking like a duck, quacking like a duck. So this dictator wannabe would absolutely love to have some sort of pretense to declare martial law, some sort of pretense to have to declare war, declare martial law, declare he's got emergency powers, right? That's why he's got to send a bunch of troops to the border. Anytime he can get away with declaring any kind of emergency powers or some sort of martial law, there should be a limit. It should expire after a limited amount of time. The best practices is that if you're going to have some sort of emergency order, some sort of martial law, you need to narrowly tailor it, narrowly tailor what it is that's being blocked or banned for a specific duration and a specific scope. You should also have an expedited review. The Supreme Court should check it out. It should also be signed by the governor. And then if it goes past the expiration and the legislature doesn't extend it or the legislature overrides it, then the governor can't just reissue another martial law, emergency powers, this is war kind of thing. That's best practices. That's just common sense. So I think it's wonderful that Bob Ferguson just got into office, the governor of Washington. He just got into office, so he's got, another 4 years of being governor. But by signing these emergency power reform, this emergency powers reform, the governor is the only person who could declare an emergency or stop it. He's showing that there are limits to tyrants. And unfortunately, the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. Find out what a people will quietly submit to, and you found the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and the oppression will continue until stopped with words or blows or both. Every man would be a tyrant if you let him. Any old excuse will serve a tyrant. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. And so the legislature, I don't know how they should word it, but I think after 90 days is a good idea. The legislature should endorse it. There should be an assent or a rejection. 90 days, you declared your, let's just take a specific example. If you have the LA fires, well, the only emergency that you need is just an emergency long enough to put the flames out, right? Once the flames are out, once there is not a fire, the emergency is over, so therefore your emergency power should be over as well. So, crazy thing about Washington, the governor of Washington, when they declare an emergency, and then, whenever they feel like stopping it, they can stop it. They can prohibit peaceful assemblies and the sale of alcohol. They could also forego fees and taxes. This is absolute and arbitrary power. This is too much. This is crazy. Does the Supreme Court and the Congress in the state of Washington have absolutely no say-so? So there's a couple different ideas with the bills and the amendments. Should it be the top four? Should it be the majority of the House? Should there be a 3-day prohibition of activities unless the legislature ends them? Should it be over 90 days? This bill might actually fail. But I love the conversation. I love that Bob Ferguson is willing to talk about the limits of his dictatorial powers. It shows that he is smart, intelligent, and that even the wisest people out here, you need somebody to call you out on your BS. You need to have some sort of parameters. And the whole point of 3 branches of government is that they're supposed to be a team. Any old excuse would serve a tyrant, and resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. Abigail Adams said that every man would be a tyrant if you let him. So I just wanted to talk about the emergency powers reform that the governor of Washington, Bob Ferguson, is mulling over, is considering, is thinking about. They have a lot of different wording, a lot of different definitions. I don't know if they'll actually, figure their shit out or not. But the fact that Bob Ferguson is willing to have the conversation, maybe Bob Ferguson should just write the damn bill up and then see if the House, if the Senate and the House would approve of it. I don't like writing. The top 4 of the leadership could just put it in writing, so there's not even a vote for the legislature. No, you need the entire legislature. If it's an important thing, then the entire legislature, you can get to a simple majority. Simple majority can either stop the emergency powers or start the emergency powers. Maybe put the emergency powers into the hands of the Congress. That way you'll have, 300 or so many people that will consider whether or not we need an emergency declared and whether those emergency powers will actually be put in force. Because any old excuse would serve a tyrant. Oh my God, I stubbed my toe. Declare an emergency. Oh, there's a tidal wave tsunami coming up. Declare emergency. Oh, what? There's a little grease fire. Declare an emergency. You don't need to declare emergency any old time that you feel like it, you goddamn dictator, autocratic, monarchical, tyrannical pile of shit. Senate Bill 5434. So maybe Congress can think about this bill, The U.S. Congress. They could pay attention to what the state of Washington is doing, and they can, learn a lesson or two.